The evening light shimmered on the wet pavement. People walked past in thick coats, rushing home before the cold deepened. Daniel Cross stepped out of his sleek black car and looked around. The air smelled faintly of roasted chestnuts and city rain. He was a man everyone knew by name, but few ever truly saw. The papers called him a billionaire, a genius investor, a man who could buy anything. Yet, as he stood under the fading streetlight, he felt something missing, something that money could not buy. Daniel had spent the whole day in meetings. He had smiled when expected, signed documents worth millions, and nodded at praises that meant little to him. Success had become routine, not joy. His wife had passed away years ago, and his only son studied abroad, rarely calling home. His house, though grand, felt like a museum. Tonight, he wanted a simple meal, not in one of his own restaurants, not in a five-star suite, but somewhere ordinary, somewhere quiet. He turned the corner and saw a small family café, its warm light spilling across the snow. The sign above the door was old and chipped, yet something about it felt welcoming. He pushed open the door. A soft bell chimed. Inside, the air was warm, scented with bread and coffee. There were only a few people, a mother feeding her child, a young couple sharing soup, and behind the counter, a kind old man smiled. "Welcome, sir. Sit anywhere you like." Daniel chose a corner table. He removed his gloves slowly, taking in the smallness of the place. It reminded him of simpler times. He ordered a sandwich and tea. For once, he felt like just another man having dinner. As he waited, his eyes wandered to the window. Outside, a small girl stood by the glass, holding a basket of handmade bracelets. Her coat was too thin for the cold. Her cheeks were red from the wind. She looked no older than 8. For a moment, their eyes met. She smiled at him, shy but bright, before turning away to show her bracelets to passers-by. Daniel felt something stir in his chest, a quiet ache he hadn't felt in years. He looked down at his hands. The tea had arrived. Steam rose gently from the cup. The world outside kept moving, but for Daniel, time slowed. He didn't know that this ordinary evening was about to change his life. The girl hesitated near the door. The warmth from inside brushed against her cold fingers. She looked uncertain, as if afraid to step in. The old man behind the counter noticed her and smiled kindly. "Come in, sweetheart," he said. "You'll freeze out there." She nodded shyly and stepped inside, the door closing behind her with a soft ring. Snowflakes melted on her hair. She held her basket close to her chest, her fingers stiffed from the cold. Daniel watched silently. Something about her reminded him of his late wife, how she used to help orphan children through her charity. He had donated millions in her memory, but none of it felt personal. This girl, though, felt real. The old man gave her a small cup of cocoa. She thanked him with a bright smile. Then she walked from table to table, showing her bracelets. "Would you like one, sir? They bring good luck," she said to a customer. When she reached Daniel's table, she stopped. Her brown eyes were soft, full of innocence and courage. "Would you like to buy one, Mr.?" Daniel smiled. "How much?" "Just $1, she said quickly. "But you can choose your favorite color." He picked a blue one, simple and uneven, but made with care. He reached for his wallet. The waiter came over just as he did, holding the bill for his meal. Daniel took out his platinum card, placed it on the tray, and returned his attention to the girl. She watched curiously as the waiter went to process the payment. A few moments passed. Then, the waiter returned, looking uneasy. "I'm sorry, sir," he said softly. "Your card was declined." The words hung in the air. Daniel frowned. "That's not possible. Try again." The waiter nodded and left. The girl tilted her head. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "Just a small mistake, I think." But when the waiter returned again, the same words came. "Declined." A few customers turned to look. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. It wasn't the money that bothered him, but the feeling of helplessness. He never carried cash. His phone was dead. For the first time in years, he felt small. Then, something unexpected happened. The little girl reached into her pocket and pulled out a few coins. She placed them on the table gently. "Here," she said, "you can pay him with this." Daniel froze. The room fell silent. She smiled shyly. "It's okay, Mr. You can give it back later." Her voice was soft, but her kindness cut through the silence like light through fog. And in that moment, Daniel Cross, the billionaire who could buy the world, was humbled by a child with nothing but courage and heart. Daniel stared at the coins on the table. 3 dull quarters and 2 nickels. They were small, yet they seemed to weigh more than gold. He looked at the girl. Her face was calm, her eyes innocent but filled with a kind of wisdom only hardship teaches. She wasn't embarrassed, only sincere. She had done what she thought was right. The waiter stood frozen. A few people whispered. Daniel straightened slowly, feeling something shift deep inside him. "You don't have to do that," he said quietly. "I want to," she answered. "You helped me buy cocoa. Now I help you." Her words were simple, yet they hit him harder than any speech. He had helped her, unknowingly maybe, by simply existing kindly. Now she was returning it, in the only way she could. The old man behind the counter approached. "It's all right, sir," he said kindly. "You can pay next time." But Daniel shook his head. "No, let her." He reached out and gently closed the girl's small fingers over the coins. "Keep them. Your heart is worth more than this meal." She frowned. "But then how will you pay?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I think we'll find a way." Just then, the waiter tried again with the card reader. A small beep followed. The screen flashed. "Approved." A quiet laugh escaped Daniel's lips. "Looks like it worked," he said softly. The girl grinned. "See, it just needed luck. My bracelets bring it." He chuckled. "Maybe you're right." He placed the blue bracelet on his wrist. The string was rough, the knots uneven, but it felt more precious than any jewel he owned. When his food came, he insisted she sit with him. She hesitated, but hunger showed in her eyes. He offered her half his sandwich. She accepted shyly and ate slowly, as if afraid to waste a single crumb. Daniel watched her. "What's your name?" "Lila," she said. "Beautiful name," he said. "Where's your family, Lila?" She looked down. "It's just me and Grandma. She's sick, so I sell bracelets after school. Sometimes people buy, sometimes they don't." Her voice was light, but Daniel could hear the fatigue behind it. "And your school?" he asked. "I go when I can," she said. "But Grandma needs medicine, so I miss sometimes." He nodded, saying nothing more. Her honesty cut deep. He had built hospitals and funded scholarships, yet here sat a child who still slipped through the cracks. When they finished, Lila gathered her things. "I should go now," she said. "Grandma will worry." Daniel stood and helped her with her coat. "Do you come here often?" "Only when it's warm inside," she said. "They let me rest here sometimes." He smiled gently. "Then I hope to see you again." She nodded. "Don't forget your lucky bracelet." As she stepped into the cold night, Daniel watched her vanish into the snow. For the first time in years, his chest felt heavy not with stress, but with purpose. The snow had thickened. It blanketed the streets and softened the city's noise. Daniel stood beside his car, looking in the direction Lila had gone. He could have left then, driven home to his mansion, returned to his silent rooms. But something in him resisted. The image of her small hands placing those coins on the table stayed in his mind. He turned to his driver. "Not home," he said quietly. "Follow that girl." The driver blinked in surprise. Sir Daniel's tone remained calm. "She can't have gone far." The car rolled through the quiet streets. Daniel watched from the window as the snowflakes blurred the world outside. After a few blocks, he saw her. Lila walked carefully, clutching her basket close, her thin shoes sinking in the slush. She turned down a narrow alley. Daniel told the driver to stop. He stepped out, the cold biting through his coat. He followed slowly, not wanting to frighten her. The alley opened into a small courtyard surrounded by old buildings. Dim lights flickered in a few windows. Lila climbed the steps to a tiny apartment and knocked. A frail voice answered. "Lila, is that you?" "Yes, Grandma, it's me," she said, pushing the door open. Daniel hesitated. Through the small window, he saw the room bare walls, a thin blanket, a single lamp glowing beside an old woman lying in bed. Lila set her basket down, took out the sandwich Daniel had given her half of, and placed it beside the old woman. "Eat, Grandma," she said softly. "I sold one bracelet today, and a kind man helped me too." The old woman smiled faintly. "You're my brave girl," she whispered. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He stepped back into the shadows, not wanting to intrude. He had seen poverty in reports, in numbers, in donation lists, but never like this. Not this close, not this real. He returned to the car, silent. The driver looked at him through the mirror. "Everything all right, sir?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, everything's finally clear." He pulled out his phone and sent a message to his assistant. "Find the owner of a small café on Maple Street. Also locate a school nearby and an address registered to a child named Lila. I'll explain tomorrow." As they drove away, he looked once more at the blue bracelet on his wrist. Its color caught the streetlight, shimmering faintly through the glass. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat by his window, thinking of Leela and her grandmother. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man of wealth. He felt like a man who had been given a lesson in humanity. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in quiet white. And somewhere in that vast silence, a bond had been formed between two souls from different worlds. The next morning, light crept through the narrow curtains of Lila's home. She sat beside her grandmother, helping her sip a small bowl of soup. The air smelled faintly of medicine and boiled rice. Her grandmother smiled weakly. "You're my little sunshine," she whispered. "Did you sell anything yesterday?" Lila nodded proudly. "Yes, one bracelet, and a man bought it. He said it brings luck." "Then maybe our luck is changing," her grandmother said softly. A gentle knock came at the door. Lila's eyes widened. Few people ever visited them. She set the bowl down and opened the door slowly. Daniel stood there, holding a small box filled with groceries, fruit, and neatly packed medicine. He smiled kindly. "Good morning, Lila." She blinked in surprise. "Mister, how did you find me?" "I asked around," he said. "May I come in?" She nodded shyly and stepped aside. The small apartment seemed even smaller with his tall frame inside. He placed the box on the table. "These are for your grandmother. I remembered you said she needed medicine." Leela looked at the box, then back at him. "But why would you do that?" Daniel hesitated, searching for words. "Because you helped me when I needed it. It's my turn now." Her grandmother tried to sit up. "Sir, this is too much," she said softly. "We can't accept charity." "It isn't charity," Daniel said gently. "It's gratitude." He spoke with warmth and respect, not pity. The old woman's eyes softened. "You have a kind heart," she said. He smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. I only learned from your granddaughter." Lila blushed. She didn't fully understand his words, but she felt the kindness in them. Daniel stayed for a few minutes, helping set the medicines on the shelf and checking the heater near the wall. Before leaving, he placed a small envelope beside the table. "For Leela's school fees," he said quietly. "Education opens doors that money can't." Her grandmother hesitated, but Lila looked up at him and whispered, "Thank you." Mr. Key smiled. "Remember my name, Daniel Cross." She nodded. "And remember mine, Leela." As he stepped outside into the sunlight, Daniel felt something change inside him. He had signed checks and built charities before, but this was different. This was human. That evening, Lila held the blue bracelet on his wrist in her mind and smiled. And Daniel, sitting in his office high above the city, couldn't stop thinking about the girl who had given him more than he had ever given anyone. Weeks passed. Winter began to fade. The cafe on Maple Street looked different now. Its walls were freshly painted, the lighting warmer, the smell of bread richer than ever. Daniel stood with the cafe owner, reviewing documents. "I'm funding this place under one condition," he said. "Every morning, children who can't afford breakfast eat here free." The owner, the same kind old man, smiled. "That's a fine condition, sir." Daniel nodded. "Name the new section after the girl who inspired it." A small wooden sign was placed outside. "Lila's Corner, free breakfast for kids." When Lila and her grandmother arrived that morning, she stopped at the sight. Her mouth opened in awe. "That's my name," she said softly. Daniel smiled. "Yes, you helped me remember what kindness looks like. Now you get to share it with others." She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Thank you." He patted her shoulder gently. "No, Lila, thank you." The cafe filled with laughter that morning. Children came with empty stomachs and left with smiles. Daniel watched them eat and talk, the sound of clinking cups and soft chatter wrapping the room in warmth. Leela moved among the tables, helping the younger ones, sharing her bracelets with anyone who looked sad. The old man whispered to Daniel, "You've changed this place." Daniel looked around. She did. I just followed her lead. He watched as Lila handed a little boy a bracelet. "It brings luck," she said with the same smile she'd given him that night. Later, he sat at his usual table, sipping tea. Leela joined him. "Mr. Daniel, can I tell you something?" "Of course," he said. "When I grow up, I want to open a big place like this," she said. "But not to sell things. To help people eat, learn, and rest." He nodded slowly. "You will, Lila. You already have the heart for it. The rest will come." She smiled proudly, her eyes bright. Outside, the snow had melted. The streets were wet, reflecting the sunlight. The city that once felt cold now seemed alive again. That day, Daniel made another quiet decision. He contacted his team and began setting up a foundation in Leela's name. Its first project, scholarships for children in need. He didn't announce it publicly. No press, no headlines, just quiet change, born from one child's kindness. Years passed, seasons turned quietly, carrying stories with them. Lila grew. She finished school, then college. Through the foundation Daniel created, she studied social work and returned to the same neighborhood where she had once sold bracelets in the cold. Now, she stood before a tall building with clean walls and bright windows. The sign above the door read, Lila Foundation for Hope. A crowd had gathered: families, children, teachers, workers. Daniel stood beside her, older now, his hair touched with gray, his smile calm and proud. "Are you ready?" he asked. Lila nodded. "You kept your promise." He smiled. "No, you kept yours." Together, they cut the ribbon. Cheers filled the air. Children rushed inside, exploring the classrooms, the art rooms, the small library. Lila looked around with tearful eyes. "This was your dream," Daniel said. "It was ours," she replied softly. He lifted his sleeve slightly. The blue bracelet still rested on his wrist, faded but unbroken. "I still wear it," he said. She laughed gently. "Then it really does bring luck." He looked at her, pride shining in his eyes. "You brought the luck, Lila. I just listened." As the crowd clapped and music began, Daniel stepped back and watched her greet each visitor with warmth. She spoke to the children, knelt to their level, and handed them new bracelets, colorful, handmade, filled with care. For him, that moment was worth more than all his companies, all his wealth. He had learned that wealth was not counted in money, but in lives touched and hearts changed. Later, as the sun set, Lila and Daniel stood outside the center. The air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. She looked up at him. "Do you ever think about that night in the café?" He smiled softly. "Every day. It was the night a little girl showed me what true wealth is." Leela's eyes glistened. "And it was the night someone believed in me." They stood in silence for a while, watching the light fade over the city. Children's laughter echoed from inside the building. Daniel turned to her. "Promise me one thing." "What?" she asked. "Keep giving, even when you think you've given enough." She nodded. "I will." He smiled. "Then I can rest easy." The evening sky deepened into gold and pink. For a moment, the world felt still, as if time itself paused to honor what kindness could create. From a single act of generosity had grown a legacy that would outlive them both. And somewhere, in the soft hum of the city, the quiet sound of a child's laughter carried the memory of a blue bracelet and the unthinkable kindness that changed lives forever.